DICE have just responded to the TTK weapon balance conversation. In a blog post released in just the last couple of hours, community manager Adam Freeman spoke at great length about some of the issues that were raised by the community after that post went live about weapon balance changes last week, and now we have a huge amount of information that we can discuss. And it does very much change the conversation about what these changes are really going to do. I'm not kidding when I say this will be quite a long video, but long videos like this one, they deserve some shilling. My brand new merch design, Field Stripping, is now live. How perfectly timed that the new design is the breakout of a gun, and we're talking about gun balancing in Battlefield 5. It's a more detailed design than the last one, and we've got it in dark and light options, so there is more you can choose from, and it's in t-shirts and hoodies at the same time. I know, how amazing, I got it all right. Head over to bit.ly/Westie shop and check out the design, grab yourself one. It will be live right across Black Friday as well, so you've got a little bit of time here. Okay then, let's dive into all of the information that we now have. I'm going to start off by giving you the overall, very general message from the DICE team before I get into some of the details, because it'll be easier for me to set your expectations correctly that way before we get too deep into the video and maybe you get slightly confused by some of the more complex information that we're going to talk about. So, the very clear message that is being portrayed by DICE is that they have not set out to change the time to kill in Battlefield 5. According to the team, this was not their primary objective with the changes. Instead, they've clarified that they're focusing on balancing how each and every weapon across a range of weapon classes and weapon types will now behave at different ranges. At more extreme long ranges for certain weapons, when they're being used outside of their optimal engagement range, there will be a time to kill change. Weapons being used outside their intended design, they will be less effective after this update. However, the team is also stating that they're not looking to change the lethality of Battlefield 5's gunplay, and they're not trying to punish skilled players. Those are the people who can land their shots consistently, or maybe they're pushing for headshots more than others. Changing the base time to kill in Battlefield 5 is not the aim. Instead, the changes are far broader, they're more advanced, and they're a lot more in-depth than the last time that DICE tried to change the weapon balance. This new change, it affects many more parts of the weapon design than just a blanket damage reduction that was tried last year. This update is being made after collecting data from the last several months of Battlefield 5 gameplay, and they're being implemented to encourage a better entry point for players who want to start playing Battlefield 5, but also, at the same time, the changes are set up to preserve the more skillful elements of the system that more experienced players currently enjoy. That's the general statement from DICE on these changes. They've come out and they've answered the community on the point that the TTK is going to be changed. DICE is saying that isn't their main objective here, but that outside the intended engagement ranges of certain weapons, some weapons will be less effective, and translated that means at longer ranges, certain weapons will take more bullets and therefore more time to kill opponents in some situations. Although each weapon needs to be treated individually here, this is a huge rebalance of the entire gunplay system for Battlefield 5. It goes well beyond just talking about the time to kill. We're talking about recoil, bullets to kill, frames to kill in some places. There's a lot to it. And even at this point, me saying that this slightly calms my concerns about what's going to happen, I still can't tell you if this is a good update or not, because none of us have had a chance to play it yet. It's all out there on paper now, and there's some great answers here that we're going to talk through now, but if you're looking for a quick answer, is this update good or bad for Battlefield 5? I still can't really tell you, because none of us have had a chance to play it yet. But now we're going to take a look at some of this more in-depth information, and we're going to answer some questions about whether this could be good or bad based on what we have in front of us right now. The blog post goes into a question and answer format. The team is basically answering questions from the feedback that they got last week. The questions are presented basically in the form they were asked, as far as I'm aware, so some of the questions are rather blunt, but some of the answers in return are quite blunt as well. Fair's fair. I'm going to go through some of these questions and pick out some of the answers that I think are the most important to the conversation, and the ones that give us insight into the changes that DICE is making. At the end of the day, I think most people who are opposed to these weapon balance changes, they're just looking for reassurance that the game is not going to completely change. And I think many of these answers point in that direction. First question, the current time to kill is perfect, why are you changing it? According to DICE, the current time to kill is perfect, but only if the right person is using the right gun in the right situation. DICE is calling this a narrow spectrum balance, and they're looking to try and change that. At its very core, the damage per second or bullets to kill of most weapons in the game is fairly equal, meaning it's easy to find a gun that can work well in nearly any situation. The STG assault rifle is a really good example of that. Players find that gun, they realise it works very well in almost any situation, and they stick with it and tend not to deviate from that choice too much. For DICE, this creates problems when they add new content, because that content then has less value, because if the gun being added isn't as good as everything that everyone else was already using, then you're not going to use the new weapon, and it also means that in trying to introduce new gameplay styles, they seem less attractive than what you're already doing, because you've already got a very effective weapon in your hands. DICE is trying to grow the spectrum or widen the spectrum of playstyles within each weapon class. They're trying to give every player of Battlefield 5 more options, and to make more of the playstyles that they like viable within the core gameplay loop. Each weapon class is going to have a more discrete range applied to them, so players know with certainty when they pick a weapon where it's going to be most effective. And by grouping these weapons together, there will be more room in the balancing model to introduce new weapons into those categories, or a brand new weapon class can be added and there will be much more space for them. And all at the same time, they're going to try and highlight currently less popular weapons in Battlefield 5 and make them more viable. DICE is trying to achieve all of that, whilst not reducing the lethality and the average time to kill in Battlefield 5, especially at close range and during flanking scenarios. Doesn't sound like a massively easy update to achieve. Next question. What do you know about the game that we don't that suggests the current time to kill is wrong and needs changing? According to DICE, they don't have any data that suggests the current time to kill is the issue within Battlefield 5, and that's why they're not looking to change the time to kill. Instead, they're looking to change other elements of the weapon balance that they do have data on, showing that they're problematic areas for players. DICE has identified one of these areas is being shot in the back and then not having the chance to spin round and return fire at the player who shot you before you just end up dying. DICE is calling these ambush kills, and they occur at longer ranges where an enemy player is using a weapon to reach well beyond the intended engagement range of that weapon to shoot at you and kill you, and thus you have absolutely no time to react. To try and resolve this, DICE is rebalancing how weapons perform at range, with individual changes happening to each different weapon and weapon class. If the damage done by close-range weapons in general is now lower at longer ranges, thus outside their intended engagement range, then you, the player being shot at, will have a little bit more time to react and maybe even return fire and land a couple of shots. Now, DICE still fully expects that the player being shot at will likely die in that scenario, since they have taken damage already, but by being able to turn around and maybe shoot back, the player will feel less like they were deleted off the map by a player that they had no idea was targeting them. DICE also has data to prove that the core gameplay loop is more frustrating than what's being discussed within the active core community. Through surveys and through player behaviour, DICE has been able to measure that there are more players unhappy with the gameplay loop than there are happy. They can see, over time, satisfaction with the gameplay loop has steadily decreased. These are reasons DICE is using to justify their changes to the weapon balance, which of course is an extremely important element of the overall core gameplay loop. 95% of the time you are running around with a primary weapon in your hand. Next question. Are you just doing this for the Christmas noobs, only to change it back next year? Of course, this was the feedback a lot of people gave last week. Now, according to DICE, that's not something they're doing. They're doing it to reset the weapon balance in the game and provide them a platform to start tweaking from again. Now, personally, at the time that the previous blog did go live, I felt the timing of the changes was a bit too coincidental to be much more than a way to make the game easier for those newer Christmas players, but DICE is saying that was not their objective with these changes, and they plan to set this change live at the beginning of Chapter 5 with the Pacific update, but the changes weren't ready at that point, so things got pushed back to Update 5.2. Whether this answer satisfies many people who ask the question, are you just doing this for Christmas, noobs? That really remains to be seen. There will be some people that remain unconvinced, but I'm willing to give DICE the benefit of the doubt here. And then the next question concerns those graphs from the previous blog post that kind of set the internet on fire. The graphs you shared in the community broadcast make it look like a massive TTK change. How can the bullets to kill change so radically, but the TTK remains similar? Now, according to DICE, those graphs were intended to show the changes to popular weapons in the game, so a before and after, so to speak. What the graphs lacked was a vision of the other changes that the weapon had had. So in the case of the STG-44, we could see from the graph there was a bullet to kill increase at close range and at longer range, but in the mid-range in the middle there was no bullet to kill change at all. The graph didn't showcase that there was a reduction in recoil to the STG, a reduction from 0.67 to 0.5025, making the weapon easier to control and easier to land shots with. Now, it gets a little bit technical here, so try and stay with me, but DICE says that this change to the STG demonstrates a 16 millisecond change in the expected time to kill within the designed range for the weapon, and the designed range is between 10 and 30 meters, and that assumes that the player lands lots of body shots when they try and kill somebody. If you land a headshot, then the time to kill will be shorter even further due to the damage multiplier applied to headshots. Another example that we saw was the Tommy gun. We had a graph for that as well. The weapon's expected time to kill within 10 meters is going to increase from 250 milliseconds in Update 5.0 to 330 milliseconds in Update 5.2. So that's a TTK increase of 80 milliseconds, and then 350 milliseconds to 417 milliseconds within the 10 to 15 meter range. So DICE is balancing that TTK increase out by reducing the weapon's recoil quite considerably. Vertical recoil on the Tommy gun, that's going to drop from 0.7 to 0.42, and the horizontal from 0.775 to 0.3875. So the frames to kill for the weapon change from 20 frames at 10 meters to 21 frames at 15 meters is just 1 frame extra. So I think DICE is trying to justify a TTK increase here, but is showing that with the reduced recoil, it should still be relatively easy to kill somebody, and it's going to take 1 extra frame whilst you're in game. The reason the Tommy gun is being rebalanced, by the way, is DICE feels the weapon is too effective right now, and it needs to be brought back into line with the goal of ensuring a better variety of weapons for players that they can choose from. Now, there are a bunch of other questions that DICE answers in this blog post, but if there's anything I think that we can all agree on here is that this response they've published today around this weapon balance debate, the TTK debate, whatever you want to call it, is a really thorough response. Whether you agree with what DICE is doing or not, they've gone out of their way to properly communicate what these changes are designed to do, and they've gone deep on examples to try and help people understand how things are going to change in Update 5.2. The reasoning is all there in the document. It doesn't matter if you agree or not. Now, my opinion on all of this, well, they're kind of changing the TTK somewhat in the game, but the change appears to be limited to the ranges where weapons aren't at their most effective, and the system is now designed to encourage you to swap weapons to something else if you want to start winning gunfights at those ranges that you're trying to use the gun at. It isn't a blanket TTK reduction, and that was my biggest fear from the first announcement, so I'm happy that DICE has come out and clarified that that is an issue. And I shouldn't say TTK reduction, I should say TTK increase. The TTK is increasing a little bit, but there are lots of other factors being changed to preserve how lethal the gunplay is. That's something that I can get on board with. I still can't give this change a thumbs up or a thumbs down because I haven't sat down and played with it yet, so if you're looking for me to tell you if this is a good or a bad change, well, I'm sorry, I can't quite help you out yet, but what I can tell you is that the changes aren't what we thought they were going to be, so if you were worried that the TTK and the gunplay systems that you liked in Battlefield 5 were going to be nerfed into the ground and made ridiculously different from what they were before, you can somewhat take a breath and know that that isn't the full story. Things are changing, but not in the way that we thought they were. But there you are, I'm done talking about it now. Thanks for watching. Drop me any opinions you might have down below. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments section. Don't forget to check out the new field stripping merch at bit.ly/Westie shop. That is going to be live over Black Friday and into December, so you've got plenty of time to grab something that you like. And make sure you drop this video a like as well if you enjoyed it. The dislike button is there if you didn't enjoy it. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.